Thanks for taking some time to join for the partner agency application overview. We'll cover a lot of what you'll need to know to submit a successful application to host a JV AmeriCorps member in the next year. My name is Sarah Jones, and I'm the director of the JV program. So I'm going to be walking you through a little overview of who we are and how JVs serve throughout the Pacific Northwest, what you should be preparing and planning for to gather information about your site, and then application elements that you'll need to submit online, some nuts and bolts of what our application looks like once you log into the portal, and then we'll wrap up with some key dates to have in mind for successfully submitting an application that is complete and on time. The grounding of who we are at JVC Northwest and who we look for in partnership is articulated here in our philosophy of partnership. So we're welcoming partnership with organizations that respond to local needs in the Northwest like we do. We're looking for partners that need value-added service, capacity building, and accompaniment at their agencies, particularly those that are using lenses of diversity, equity, and inclusion and bringing those practices to their work. We bring the JV AmeriCorps members to that part of it, and then in that shared power and responsibility, we hope to transform communities that we serve in to be more just and more equitable. When you think about what a JV AmeriCorps member does, that's one of the most common questions we get. There's two different ways to think about it. One, the types of service tasks that they complete, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but really the communities and organizations that they're a part of. And you can see that this list is really big. So many of your organizations may fit in one or more of these areas of focus, or it's a large umbrella that underneath of that has some specificity that is part of your organization. So when we're looking for those partnerships, we're looking for folks that are addressing inequities in their communities, and it's likely in one of these categories. JVC Northwest is also partnered with AmeriCorps. Many of our Jesuit volunteers also dually serve as AmeriCorps members. It looks the same when they show up to service every day, but there's some specifications both in what and how they can serve. So we'll cover what that looks like in this overview, and there's more details in our application guidelines as well. Maybe you've hosted a JV AmeriCorps member before and you have a good idea of what they do at your site or what you're hoping they'll do in the future. Or maybe this is new and you're looking for that baseline. So we've been partnered with AmeriCorps for quite some time. And although we are almost 70-year-old organization, our partnership with AmeriCorps has been in the 2000s. So AmeriCorps is 30 years old this year. And what that partnership has allowed us to do, first and foremost, is significantly reduce the cost for that buy-in for a partner agency to host a JV AmeriCorps member. Those federal dollars have helped us to reduce what that cost might be for an agency to get those value-added service elements conducted at your site. All of our AmeriCorps members focus on capacity building and will for the next year. That is different from maybe previous years if you've applied before when we've managed different AmeriCorps grants. Maybe you had a JV AmeriCorps member serving in public health or academic support. These are specific capacity building AmeriCorps members, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then what attracts volunteers to our program is also those AmeriCorps benefits. So our JV AmeriCorps members receive a modest living allowance as part of serving in our program. You may also know, if you've been around with JVC Northwest for a while, that we also provide housing for some of our members. The majority of our members, their residential program. That's pretty unique within the AmeriCorps portfolio. New this service term, we also have a non-residential flex model where folks can live outside of community as well. Upon completion of their service term, AmeriCorps members receive an education award that is pretty significant, a little over $7,000. That can go towards past educational costs or future costs they might incur, professional training, graduate school, things like that. AmeriCorps offers student loan forbearance depending upon the type of loan that the JV AmeriCorps member has while they're serving. They have access to mental health counseling 24/7, phone, email, and text, which is a program called the Member Assistance Program, MAP, that JVs can utilize anytime throughout their service term to get some extra support. And then just like we have an alumni network of former Jesuit volunteers, our volunteers that serve as AmeriCorps members also get plugged into the alumni network of AmeriCorps, which is vast. As I mentioned, our JVs serve primarily in capacity building. So 96% of our JVs serve in an AmeriCorps position that is focused on capacity building. And capacity building happens in one of three ways: to increase the effectiveness of the services you're delivering, the efficiency of the services you're delivering, or to increase the program scale or reach. So when you're thinking about capacity building, these are the types of activities that our service members do, and you'll pick one as part of your application. Are they primarily, maybe navigating a day space or activity space? Are they doing client coordination? Are they doing outreach, resource navigation, volunteer coordination, trying to bring more folks from the community into your site to deliver services? And then when you look at that, what's the hopeful impact that you are curious about? Is it to increase the effectiveness of what you're doing, the efficiency of what you're doing, or to improve the scale or reach or the number of people you could be delivering services to? So you'll be asked to identify both in your application. As a faith-based program, we're also curious about those bigger picture things that happen. So we have a very small portion of our positions that we preserve as independent or non-AmeriCorps members. Those positions are all positions that would be ineligible to serve in AmeriCorps positions, mostly due to restrictions and regulations around what AmeriCorps members can and can't do. And those positions are focused on advocacy and systems change, so influencing legislation and the impacts of those big decisions that are made, as well as faith-based service. So a very small portion of our positions are independent. If you are applying, you're likely going to fall into that capacity building area, but we do have a small number of folks that do host our independent JVs. Let's dive into talking about the application. So there are 4 main tabs as part of the application that we'll go through that you'll be responsible for completing to have a completed application. So if you are a returning agency, meaning your partner agency has hosted a JV or even completed an application in the past, then you will have different information than a totally new organization to us. So if you've completed an application before, we preload information in 2 tabs for you: the agency, so that high-level organization information, and then the financial and insurance information. Every person, regardless of whether or not you've hosted a JV before or not, will complete from scratch the program information and the position description. So we're going to go more in depth into each of those, but knowing kind of where your organization stands, even if this is your first time completing an application for your organization, will be important to know, because it might look different when you log into your account. Before you get started, there are a few terms that we ask for about people at your organization that would be helpful for you to figure out before you start an application. This would be important because you're going to know, who at my organization do I put in here when I get to this spot? So we're going to start with the most important person first, the site supervisor. They are the primary point of contact for the JV AmeriCorps member at service, and the primary point of contact for JVC Northwest as well. When you're thinking about who a site supervisor should be, let's talk about the requirements, because that might help you identify who would be the best person. So they are the person that's meeting one-on-one for supervisory meetings with that JV AmeriCorps member weekly. So it's that consistent ability to know the member's roles and responsibilities, provide support and feedback. They also facilitate the onboarding process for the JV AmeriCorps member, even if that's coordinating other staff at your organization to present or offer resource on different items. They also provide ongoing professional development throughout the service term. They approve the monthly timesheets that the JV AmeriCorps member submits online. They also complete our evaluations and assessments. So the initial placement assessment, which is kind of like a 90-day review that happens in November, our midterm assessment that happens in February, and our end of term evaluation that happens in typically the late spring or towards the end of their service term. And those are all completed with the JV AmeriCorps member. Those are those mileposts to check in, see how it's going, make adjustments. And then they'll also participate in our AmeriCorps evaluation if it's an AmeriCorps position, which is part of measuring that program impact that we talked about before. That's important for us to be able to show on our grant what's happening at all of our sites and how is that impacting the communities that we're a part of. So that's a lot of responsibilities and a big chunk of time. So identifying who at your organization is going to be the best fit for that, knowing what's already on someone's plate and who knows the most about what this JV AmeriCorps member might be doing. The second person is a little bit of a step back, and that's called what we call a program lead. So they might oversee a program or department in which the JV AmeriCorps member serves. They understand how the JV AmeriCorps member fits into the larger program or department or organization wide context. And they're also often that next point of contact if a site supervisor is out, or to provide some onboarding and professional development throughout the year. At some smaller organizations, the site supervisor and the program lead might be the same person, and that's okay. And that's in larger organizations, those might be two different people. The next person is the agency head. So we're looking for who's that primary decision maker for the partner agency, who's ensuring the mission, vision, and values alignment between JV Northwest and the agency, and who understands the role of that JV AmeriCorps member and can help organizationally you all understand the specific role that they play and then the boundaries of the roles that they don't play. Once again, for smaller organizations, the site supervisor, program lead, and agency head might all be the same person, and that's okay. You'll just enter their information in each of those spaces where prompted in the application. The final person is a billing contact, and that's who we want to be in touch with for technical questions around your bill, to send invoices to, and who would remit payments for the placement fee that would come throughout the year. That's a good person to engage to make sure that your organization can meet the financial costs of hosting a JV AmeriCorps member. So helping them understand all of the pieces that go into financially hosting a member, that they are prepared to receive invoices and remit payments. And as part of the application, you'll submit audited financials. So typically that billing contact is the person that would have those at your organization. If that's not you, then it usually requires some coordinating between staff people for that. So planning ahead for that, and not waiting till the last day that the application is due to get that information that you need. Once again, at smaller organizations, all 4 of these roles might be the same person. At larger organizations or mid-sized organizations, there may be 2, 3, or 4 different people that fill these roles. Let's dive into looking at the application. So when you log into NAC, which is our online application portal, if you've hosted a JV since 2019 or applied since 2019, then this may look familiar to you. It's the same portal that we've been using since then. And this will take you to this home screen. So if you've submitted applications in the past, like our test account has, then you can see past applications and review your full responses there. But really what you want to focus on is at the top here, complete your application. That will take you to our current application. So looking at the 25-26 service term, yep, that's what I'm looking for. And then I want to get started. The first screen that you'll see is an application overview. It gives a brief description of each of the tabs that you'll complete, and then just more information around deadline, reminders, things like that. It is important to know that each of these tabs would need to be saved separately. So it's not auto-saved like some other tools that we may be used to using. So making sure and that you're saving application information as you're going along. Otherwise, you might risk losing that and having to redo your application when you don't mean to. And all fields must be completed to save something. So even if you're not feeling ready to fully complete the application, even just putting a few notes in, like complete this later, to help you remember to come back to different sections is important if you want to save and come back. That is a limitation of this program, that there's not an auto save that happens. We've heard from partner agencies that they really recommend completing the information left to right, so then you know that you're not forgetting anything, and then you'll end at that submission of your application. Let's talk about the agency and insurance and financial information tabs. So if you're a returning partner agency, you've hosted a JV AmeriCorps member before, or you've applied to host a JV AmeriCorps member before, This information will be pre-filled from your previous applications. What we ask you to do is to review this information, update anything. Maybe you've had some staffing changes, maybe you've had different things that have changed. So we're not assuming everything's the same from last year. We're just preloading for you what you said last year, knowing that some of this stuff doesn't change as often. We sometimes also add new questions. So review that information, update it, and then answer any new questions that you might not have ever answered before to complete these parts. If you're new, once again, you'll have the same questions. They just will be blank. So the agency information tab asks for basic organization information, your tax status, union involvement, your annual report, and other volunteers that your organization hosts. The insurance and financial information talks about your financial health. Once again, that contact. Looking for audited financials. We only need those from new partner agencies, those that have never hosted a JV AmeriCorps member before. If you currently host a JV or have before, we don't need those from you, so you can skip that question. We talked about the financial commitment to hosting a JV AmeriCorps member. And once again, this is the section that most people that are completing the application need to coordinate with other staff members at their organization. So knowing that getting this tab out of the way first, or at least starting that process of communication with your colleagues, will help you work towards that deadline with some confidence. So this is the agency information tab that you'll complete. Once again, it may also already be pre-filled for you. And then this is the insurance and financial information. So you'll scroll down, complete all the questions in both of these, and then there's a save button at the bottom of each page that you'll save to have us know that, yep, I'm feeling confident about this information. If you save it, you can always come back and edit it as well. So it's not fully locking it in until you submit the application. Everything is editable. Now let's talk about the program tab. So for larger organizations, you might have a really big organization, and then the JV AmeriCorps member you're applying for would operate in a specific program. So this is where we want a little bit more information about that program that they might operate in. So maybe it's the education program or the outreach team. Some of that information may be different or the same than your agency. If you're a smaller organization, your program and agency might be interchangeable. So we're just asking for a little bit more specifics about your organization. If you're a really large organization, we want to know more specifics about the specific program that the JV is operating in. If you're a site that is going to apply for multiple JVs across programs, you can add multiple programs here. So one will already be open for you, so you'll complete that, and then you'll hit save at the bottom, and then that program will come up to this table at the top. And you can always add as many programs as you want. We have some organizations that have 5 or 6 programs, and some organizations that just have 1. So knowing what makes sense for you. If you ever want to go back and edit a program, you can go into this edit program button, and that will take you right back there where you need it to be able to make those changes. On the program information, we ask for program narrative and statistics. We ask for that program lead and contact information, as I mentioned before. And this is also where we talk about what are your plans for onboarding and orientation, what type of training is available to this JV AmeriCorps member, what will supervision look like, how do you intersect with diversity, equity, inclusion, and this is where you'll think about also the AmeriCorps eligibility of this program or position. The position tab looks pretty similar to the program. Same thing, you can add as many positions as you want. You can also request multiple JV AmeriCorps members serving with the same position description. So maybe you want 2 JVs that would serve in the exact same role. You don't need to add 2 of the exact same information. You'll be able to say, we'd like to have 2 JVs serving in here. And same thing, you'll add as many positions as you want, making sure that you're adding them and they're showing up in that table. That's how you can ensure that, great, everything I had is saved here. If it's not showing up in that table, you probably have a question that's unanswered that you need to complete, and then you can save. Same thing, you're able to edit as you need it and can come back and make changes throughout the process. So in the position tab, we ask for position details. Once again, that number of JVs you're requesting. who that site supervisor is going to be, what's the purpose of that position. So when we talked about before, effectiveness, efficiency, and program reach, the types of tasks they're going to do. We ask you to get into specifics around what their schedule would be. If you're curious about the schedule requirements, those are in the application guidelines to talk about when and how JV AmeriCorps members can serve. And the final section also talks about what you're looking for in an ideal applicant. We do our matching with our applicant pool and then match them with a position. So we want to make sure that we only match people with your position that are qualified to serve in your role. So that's where you'll name any experience, qualities, training, certificates, education level that the JV AmeriCorps member applicant would need to be successful in your position. So let's talk about what isn't possible for JV AmeriCorps members to do. So when you're thinking about writing your position in the position tab, that you're avoiding that, which can slow down your application if we have to come back and say, hey, we need to make some adjustments based on what you submitted. It's outside the bounds of what is possible. So avoiding prohibited activities. Our JV AmeriCorps members serve in unique and value-added positions. So they can't be doing something that anyone else does. So you can't have a paid staff person and a JV AmeriCorps member that are operating with the same position description. Our members focus on direct service. So they're really in the mix at your sites often, and any administrative tasks would be in direct support for those service activities. So making phone calls, maybe to coordinate something that's going to happen in person or virtually, is important. And JV AmeriCorps members can't duplicate or displace staff, even temporarily. So even if someone's out unexpectedly or there's a front desk to be covered, those aren't parts of JV AmeriCorps members' roles. So making sure that that's not part of your position description, and then more importantly, that you're doing the education, if accepted, on your staff side to know, please don't ask the JV AmeriCorps member to do that. They can't cover the phones because that's not part of their responsibilities. That's part of their site, and that would be displacing a staff person or a volunteer or an intern. And there's more information about that in the partner agency application guidelines if you're curious, or talk to a staff person at JVs Northwest to help you think that through. As I mentioned before, many of our JVs live in community, so they have commitments to our program outside of that service day. So there are some limitations around their schedule that allow them to be fully present in community as well. So JV AmeriCorps members, if they're serving in a full-time position, would serve 32 to 40 hours per week at service. When you're thinking about that schedule, they must have 2 consecutive days off, one of which must be a Saturday or a Sunday. So most of our JVs serve Monday to Friday. If you would have a need to have a weekend service, then they need to have 2 days off, and one of them must be a Saturday or Sunday. So having a Friday and Saturday off is fine, Saturday, Sunday, or Sunday, Monday. JVs can serve a little bit in the evening, but no more than 2 days per week serving past 6 p.m. To allow for those community elements as part of the program. And that would also include considering their commute home. So what does it look like to be able to serve until 6 and then get home and be able to be with community? And there are no service days more than 18 hours a day. That sounds like a really long day, or that comes up most commonly is a hope or expectation that a JV would, especially if they're in a school or other type of space, most often with youth, that there's overnight trips or that part of the JV position, and that's not allowable within our program. So if that's something that you're hoping a volunteer would do, that would be for a different position and not a JV AmeriCorps member. Let's talk about titles briefly. So the JVs are non-essential but value added. So they really shouldn't ever be a director or a manager of anything. So when you're thinking about titles, those aren't really titles that we would welcome. And they're also unique. So a role like an assistant implies that there's another person more fully doing that role that would not work either. And then we also avoid the word advocate, mostly around some connotations at the federal level around advocate meaning an implied bias, or sometimes can happen in the legislative space. So we avoid that language just to avoid the assumption that an AmeriCorps member might be doing something that's prohibited. Great titles to use and consider A lot of our JV AmeriCorps members are coordinators, they're specialists, they're technicians, they're navigators, they're educators. We love anything that you might want to come up with on your own. The great positions titles list is expansive, and thinking about avoiding those prohibited titles when you can. You can also see our current position titles on our website. So if you want to see what other people have listed as position titles, feel free to check that out. And finally, when you're writing a position description, JV AmeriCorps members serve, they don't work. So that's really specific, especially for AmeriCorps members. So they don't work on tasks, they don't work with coworkers, they don't have coworkers. They're a unique role at your site. So they serve, they are serving at your site, and they are collaborating with people. There's lots of synonyms you can come up with for work. It's impressive that you don't recognize how often you're using that until you're asked to take that out. So when you're doing your position description, take some time to review, even do a Control F of the word work and see, okay, here's where I might need to swap that out for a different term. Once you're feeling really confident about all of the application, you will submit it. That is the last tab on the screen. So we ask for your information who's submitting the application, knowing that you may be one of those 4 different types of titles and roles that we have, or you might be a totally different person at the organization, maybe you're a grants manager. So we want to know who submitted the application and when. If you are an organization that's hosting many JVs across different programs and maybe different people are completing different parts of the application, it's important to coordinate when the submission is going to happen. So you don't submit the application before your colleague has a chance to input their information. So making sure that internal collaboration is happening well. And we notify the agency head, the program lead, and the site supervisor and billing contact of the status at the end of the process when we do notifications. If you are someone that's not one of those 4 people but does need to get that status letter knowing whether or not you've been accepted, there's also a chance to put in your contact information in there so we can include you on that list. So our application opened on October 9th, once again in NAC, that via the online portal that you've been seeing the screenshots of. All materials and that final submission screen must be submitted by November 18th. So that's the deadline you're working towards. And then we'll send notifications via email and usually mid to late December, or we may be in touch with you ahead of time if there is information that feels incomplete or we're not quite sure about in your application. But that big email to all the agency contacts would happen in mid to late December. If you need assistance throughout the process, there's lots of things that you can do to get help. Our process is meant to be supportive and not a test, so a chance to just get the connection that you need. If you want feedback on a proposed position or you're thinking about something new, the best person to talk to is the JV Northwest staff person for your locale. So maybe a program coordinator or our assistant director that's assigned to your locale. You can find that online, or maybe you've already been in contact with them. They are traveling on area visit during this window of time, so giving some space for them to get back to you is really important. Viewing the application guidelines document, as I mentioned, that's also available online. There's technical assistance that you can get for new accounts and passwords and things like that. There's a form you can complete to get a new account set up. So maybe there's multiple people at your organization that need to work on the application. And then we'll have virtual office hours throughout the month of October and early November as well. And those Zoom links you can find via email. Thanks for taking some time to overview the application process, and we hope that it is a chance for your organization to really examine what you might need in a JV AmeriCorps member at your site, and then how can we help meet the needs of your organization through promoting your position and finding the right fit for you throughout the service term. Once again, please be in touch if you have any questions. We're here to help.